Berengaria was Queen of Castile in 1217 and Queen consort of León from 1197 to 1204. As the eldest child and heir presumptive of Alfonso VIII of Castile, she was a sought-after bride, and was engaged to Conrad, the son of Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa. After his death, she married her cousin Alfonso IX of León to secure the peace between him and her father. She had 5 children with him before the marriage was voided by Pope Innocent III. When her father died, she served as regent for her younger brother Henry I in Castile until she succeeded him on his untimely death. Within months, she turned Castile over to her son, Ferdinand III, concerned that as a woman she would not be able to lead Castile's forces. However, she remained one of his closest advisors, guiding policy, negotiating, and ruling on his behalf for the rest of her life. She was responsible for the reunification of Castile and León under her son's authority, and supported his efforts in the Reconquista. She was a patron of religious institutions and supported the writing of a history of the two countries. Early family life. Berengaria was born either in 1179 or 1180, in Burgos. She was the eldest daughter of King Alfonso VIII of Castile and Eleanor of England. Those who cared for the young infanta were generously rewarded. Her nurse, Estefania, received land from Alfonso and Eleanor on her retirement in May of 1181. Another nurse, Elvira, received a similar retirement gift in 1189 at Berengaria's request. As the eldest child of King Alfonso and Eleanor, she was the heiress presumptive of the throne of Castile for several years, because many of her siblings who were born after her died shortly after birth or in early infancy, so Berengaria became a greatly desired partner throughout Europe. Berengaria's first engagement was agreed in 1187 when her hand was sought by Conrad, Duke of Rothenburg and 5th child of Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa. The next year, the marriage contract was signed in Seligenstadt, including a dowry of 42,000 maravedì. Conrad then marched to Castile, where in Carrion the engagement was celebrated and Conrad was knighted. Berengaria's status as heir of Castile when she inherited the throne was based in part on documentation in the treaty and marriage contract, which specified that she would inherit the kingdom after her father or any childless brothers who may come along. Conrad would only be allowed to co-rule as her spouse, and Castile would not become part of the empire. The treaty also documented traditional rights and obligations between the future sovereign and the nobility. The marriage was not consummated due to Berengaria's young age, as she was less than 10 years old. Conrad and Berengaria never saw each other again. By 1191, Berengaria requested an annulment of the engagement from the Pope, influenced no doubt by third parties such as her mother Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was not interested in having a Hohenstaufen as a neighbor to her French fiefdoms. Those fears were neutralized when the Duke was assassinated in 1196. Marriage to Alfonso IX. In order to help secure peace between Castile and León, Berengaria married Alfonso IX of León, her first cousin once removed, in Valladolid in 1197. As part of the marriage, and in accordance with Spanish customs of the time, she received direct control over a number of castles and lands within León. Most of these were along the border with Castile, and the nobles who ran them in her name were allowed to seek justice from either king in the event of being wronged by the other. In turn, these knights were charged with maintaining the peace along the border in the Queen's name. Berengaria and Alfonso IX had 5 children: Eleanor, Constance, a nun in the Abbey of Las Huelgas, Ferdinand III, King of Castile and León. Alfonso, Lord of Molina and Mesa by his first marriage. He married, first, Mafalda de Lara, heiress of Molina and Mesa, second, Teresa Núñez, and third, Mare Tellez de Meneses, Lady of Montealegre and Tidra, by whom he was the father of Maria of Molina, wife of King Sancho IV of León and Castile. Berengaria married John of Brienne, King of Jerusalem. Starting in 1198, Pope Innocent III objected to the marriage on the grounds of consanguinity, though the couple stayed together until 1204. They vehemently sought a dispensation in order to stay together, including offering large sums of money. However, the Pope denied the request, although they succeeded in having the children considered legitimate. Her marriage dissolved, Berengaria returned to Castile and to her parents in May 1204, where she dedicated herself to the care of her children. Between queenships, though she had left her role as Queen of León, she retained authority over and taxing rights in many of the lands she had received there, including Salamanca and Castroverde, which she gave to her son Ferdinand in 1206. Some of the nobles who had served her as queen followed her back to the court in Castile. The peace which had prevailed since her marriage was lost, and there was war again between León and Castile, in part over her control of these lands. In 1205, 1207, and 1209, treaties were made again between the two countries, each expanding her control. In the treaties of 1207 and 1209, Berengaria and her son were given again significant properties along the border, including many key castles, including Villalpando. The treaty in 1207 is the first existing public document in the Castilian dialect. In 1214, on the death of her father, Alfonso VIII of Castile, the crown passed to his only surviving son, Berengaria's 10-year-old brother, Henry I. The mother Eleanor assumed the regency, but died 24 days after her husband. Berengaria, now heir presumptive again, replaced her as regent. At this point internal strife began, instigated by the nobility, primarily the House of Lara. They forced Berengaria to cede regency and guardianship of her brother to Count Alvaro Núñez de Lara. In 1216, an extraordinary parliamentary session was held in Valladolid, attended by such Castilian magnates as Lope Diaz de Haro, Gonzalo Rodriguez Girón, Alvaro Diaz de Camarás, Alfonso Tellez de Meneses and others, who agreed, with the support of Berengaria, to make common cause against Alvaro Núñez de Lara. At the end of May the situation in Castile had grown perilous for Berengaria, so she decided to take refuge in the castle of Ortelo de Campos, which was held by Gonzalo Rodriguez Girón, and sent her son Ferdinand to the court of his father. On the 15th of August 1216, an assembly of all the magnates of Castile was held to attempt to reach an accord that would prevent civil war, but disagreements led the families of Girón, Tellez de Meneses, and Haro to break definitively with Alvaro de Lara, Queen of Castile. Circumstances changed suddenly when Henry died on 6 June 1217 after receiving a head wound from a tile which came loose while he was playing with other children at the palace of the Bishop of Palencia. His guardian, Count Alvaro Núñez de Lara, tried to hide the fact, taking the king's body to the castle of Tariego. Although it was inevitable that the news would reach Berengaria, the new sovereign was well aware of the danger her former husband posed to her reign, being her brother's closest agnate. It was feared that he would claim the crown for himself. Therefore, she kept her brother's death and her own accession secret from Alfonso. She wrote to Alfonso asking that Ferdinand be sent to visit her, and then abdicated in the son's favor on the 31st of August. In part, she abdicated as she would be unable to be the military leader Castile needed its king to be in the time. Royal advisor. Although she did not reign for long, Berengaria continued to be her son's closest advisor, intervening in state policy, albeit in an indirect manner. Well into her son's reign, contemporary authors wrote that she still wielded authority over him. One example was how she arranged the marriage of her son with Princess Elizabeth of Hohenstaufen, daughter of Duke Philip of Swabia and granddaughter of two emperors, Frederick Barbarossa and Isaac II Angelos of Byzantium. The wedding took place on the 30th of November 1219 at Burgos. Another instance in which Berengaria's mediation stood out developed in 1218 when the scheming Lara family, still headed by former regent Alvaro Núñez de Lara, conspired to have Alfonso IX, King of León and King Ferdinand's father, invade Castile to seize his son's throne. However, the capture of Count Lara facilitated the intervention of Berengaria, who got father and son to sign the Pact of Toro on the 26th of August 1218, putting an end to confrontations between Castile and León. In 1222, Berengaria intervened anew in favor of her son, achieving the ratification of the Convention of Zafra, thereby making peace with the Laras by arranging the marriage of Mafalda, daughter and heiress of the Lord of Molina, Gonzalo Pérez de Lara, to her own son and King Ferdinand's brother, Alfonso. In 1224 she arranged the marriage of her daughter Berengaria to John of Brienne, a maneuver which brought Ferdinand III closer to the throne of León. Since John was the candidate, Alfonso IX had in mind to marry his eldest daughter Sancha. By proceeding more quickly, Berengaria prevented the daughters of her former husband from marrying a man who could claim the throne of León. Perhaps her most decisive intervention on Ferdinand's behalf took place in 1230, when Alfonso IX died and designated as heirs to the throne his daughters Sancha and Dulce from his first marriage to Teresa of Portugal, superseding the rights of Ferdinand III. Berengaria met with the princess's mother and succeeded in the ratification of the Treaty of Las Terceras, by which they renounced the throne in favor of the half-brother in exchange for a substantial sum of money and other benefits. Thus were the thrones of León and Castile reunited in the person of Ferdinand III, which had been divided by Alfonso VII in 1157. She intervened again by arranging the second marriage of Ferdinand after the death of Elizabeth of Hohenstaufen. Although he already had plenty of children, Berengaria was concerned that the king's virtue not be diminished with illicit relations. This time, she chose a French noblewoman, Joan of Damartin, a candidate put forth by the king's aunt and Berengaria's sister Blanche, widow of King Louis VIII of France. Berengaria served again as regent, ruling while her son Ferdinand was in the south on his long campaigns of the Reconquista. She governed Castile and León with her characteristic skill, relieving him of the need to divide his attention during this time. Patronage and legacy. She met with her son a final time in Pozuelo de Calatrava in 1245, afterwards returning to Toledo. She died the 8th of November 1246, and was buried at Las Huelgas near Burgos. Much like her mother, she was a strong patron of religious institutions. She worked with her mother to support the Abbey of Santa Maria la Real de las Huelgas. As Queen of León, she supported the Order of Santiago and supported the Basilica of San Isidoro, not only donating to it, but also exempting it from any taxes. She re-established the tradition of Leone's royal women supporting the monastery of San Pedro de Esponza, last performed by her great-grandaunt, Sancha Raimundo. She is portrayed as a wise and virtuous woman by the chroniclers of the time. She was also concerned with literature and history, charging Lucas de Tuy to compose a chronicle on the kings of Castile and Leon to aid and instruct future rulers of the joint kingdom. She herself was discussed in the works of Rodrigo Jimenez Terrada, whose work was sponsored by her son Ferdinand, and Juan of Osma, who was Chancellor of Castile under Ferdinand. Ancestry.